Yes, it is.
I feel like I should do the Kevin Dave show, take one, right?
Go ahead.
That's all good.
All right. Well, this is the Kevin and David show. Take one.
Right. Yeah. Oh, thanks for indulging me. All right. Oh, hey, good morning, Kevin.
Morning. How are things?
Oh, things are good. It does happen to be a Saturday morning, but a lot of fun doing stuff, and these are the types of things I get excited about. So, I always look forward to talking with you and showing you some of the things that I'm working on.
This is why we're getting up in the morning. I really like this stuff.
Right.
Give me a chance to get my run in the morning and get my coffee, and then I'm good to go.
Sure. Coffee's still right here. I still got another cup to go, so that's all good.
Awesome.
It's all good. So
from what you were telling me before, I think you're going to be extending one of the use cases that you've created before. So what are we going to be talking about? Yeah.
So we're going to revisit the tank farm. A couple of things that is different here. We're still going to take some local data that sits at some various sites. And since our last video, since I had all these various locations, I've given them names because I think it's a lot easier to keep track. So we have Springfield, we have Danville, we have Arlen, and we have Highland. Those are the 4 locations, and we have some tank farms out there just for basic chemical storage. You can see the screen. This is what we're recreating. And we're going to publish those to a local. This time I'm using a HiveMQ for my MQTT broker. So as mentioned before, I've used Mosquito, I use EMQ. Well, today we're going to take a look at HiveMQ, and then I'm going to take advantage of their bridge extension. And what that does is it takes a local broker and it publishes that to a secondary broker. So that could either be in a data center. In this particular case, it's going to be the HiveMQ cloud. So I'm taking advantage of their cloud service that they have available. And this really stems out of the idea of, okay, how do you architect a system so in this way you have a local broker and then you publish all of those namespaces into an enterprise broker. And that's exactly what we're taking a look at. And so when we're done with this, we'll be able to take a look at all of the tanks that sit at all of the sites, and it'll have the exact same functionality that we did last time, except this time, instead of doing it using Ignition and making a vision window out of it, I'm doing this in their perspective. So this comes through as a web service. I'm here on a website, and you're able to view all that same data there. So that's what we're going to be working on.
Well, so I'll explain it in my own words to make sure I got it, and then I think maybe what I'll do is put up a drawing on the screen for the recording. So the idea is there's an enterprise company, they have multiple plants, and so you're going to have a structure, a UNS structure for each of the local plants. And well, of course, there's essentially a UNS structure for the whole organization. And then you are going to be taking data from all the tanks of one of those locations and publishing that up into the whole enterprise through the HiveMQ MQTT broker with the bridge extension, and the UNS, the data for the UNS, that the unified namespace that from the local location will fit right into the whole structure that exists for the enterprise itself.
Absolutely.
And then at the enterprise level, the data for all of the locations is available, and this is just kind of fitting one piece into the puzzle of many pieces of the whole enterprise.
And the idea is, that there's going to be information that you just want to have available local, all of the various nodes that go into that local system. But then there's also going to be information that you want to publish into an enterprise type system. But again, the critical thing here is to maintain a unified namespace to where that you can take a look at all of the breakdown of it, so that all of your events, all of your information, and then all of your structure that's within what the UNS provides, that's all replicated. And you now have a very easy way of taking a look at all the data. And as we did that, say, compressor model, you can build those models in as well, so it makes it a lot easier to do it. But this is a way that you would architect it. So make sense?
Yes, and you brought up an interesting point that maybe we can peel out later too, depending on how you did it. One of the things you had said was that there's a set of data that they'll want locally, but maybe the enterprise doesn't want all of that data. So there's a subset that you might want to publish. Do you have that set up where you have a lot of data locally and you're only publishing some data?
For this particular demo, I don't, but I can show you how you would actually do that, because I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to show you both how I connect to the local HiveMQ broker, as well as how the bridge connection is then set up on those local brokers.
That would be a good
That's
point.
What I have set up. Yeah.
Okay,
so that's what I've done.
To put on the tag on the end is that how you can publish only a certain limited set of the data. That would be useful.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's see.
So that's actually going to be one of the first screens that I show you. So again, we're going to start here at the Springfield plant, and you can see my entire namespace here. So it's coming out of the edge. That's my local unified namespace. So I'm utilizing, the enterprise site area, line cell. In this case, it's, the tanks area and tank 1. And this is the level that we're going to be publishing across 10 tanks. Again,
this is local only, right here.
This is local only. Yeah, exactly. So this is going to be all the tank data that exists within the Springfield location itself.
Okay.
And in order to publish to it, and I didn't want to get into the demoing of how you actually set up your transmitter within Ignition to do that, I think it's more important to take a look at how do you actually set up your the broker that's going to be there for the HiveMQ piece itself. So coming out of the box, I'm using a HiveMQ. This is one of their professional versions of their broker, and you can go right to HiveMQ and download it. Right out of the box, it comes to be very easy to get up and running. The caveat to that is there's not a lot of security that's built into that. So there's going to be a lot more you're going to want to put in here. But for the most part, there is an XML file that you go in and edit. And they do have a really good tutorial on how you get set up, get it installed, and get it all up and running. And they'll show you a more robust of a recommended, here's how you'd want to do it. But I only bring that up that basically I'm listening on 1883. I'm able to pull in, and I'm able to listen to any IP address. Normally it comes out of the box with just a local host. I have it all enabled. This is the port that it's on, so I can actually go in and take a look at a dashboard that you have. So again, there's connecting to it. So there's a client, or an MQTT client, but then they also have a pretty nice visual, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get to the enterprise side. And so that's how you're able to set all of that up. Again, there is no security here. I do not have any kind of user authentication. I'm not using any kind of SSL or anything along those lines. Again, not recommended in production, but just to make it as simple as I could, I limited what's there. There's a lot of extensions that enable those types of capabilities right out of it. But again, it's a very easy to set up. You can see I now have a broker that's running on, in the local plant, if you will, and it didn't take a whole lot to get that up and running and publishing right to it.
Okay.
In order to do the bridge extension, it's a little bit more involved. So it's in a different area. So as I mentioned, they have a number of extensions you can use, and the HiveMQ bridge is one of them. So there's a little bit more that's involved in doing that, but again, still uses a very easy configuration file. That's just an XML, and you can see that all you have to do is just enable it, what's going to be the name of the bridge. And this one, I do have some user authentication. So it's the MQTT simple. This is be very similar to what you would do in your local broker itself. Since Dan Ryken, Lieutenant Dan, gave me a bad time about using the password strong password and thought I should use something with some numbers in it, I've now set up strong password 2021.
So that way good for this whole year, for another.
Yeah, it'd be good for this whole year. Yeah, so 5 years from now, I can say, oh yeah, I last updated that password in 2021. Maybe it's time to update it, and to get a little bit of extra runtime, I might make it a couple of years out, just so I don't have to deal with it in the future. And yeah, I know this is tongue in cheek. That's not actually my password. It's stronger password 2021. And this is the actual host that you're.
That's right.
Yes, yeah, it's not just strong password, it's stronger password. So this is the actual host. So again, you could set this up as a local connection. You can also point to a URL. You can see this is the extension that I'm using. We're using port 883. So this is now a secured connection. TLS is enabled in the version of the TLS that we're using in order to get that encrypted. So this down here is where you're actually going to configure all the various topics that you're both going to subscribe to. So if there was a subset of data that you only wanted to publish, this is where you would do it. And oddly enough, you'd utilize the exact same namespace architecture for defining those. So here I've just used the wildcard of publish everything. But if there are just certain pieces that you wanted to put in there, and again, you can put in multiple filters that you now say, okay, I want this, and I want this. I've commented this section out, but from a destination standpoint, if you decide that you want to have it in a different format as it goes into your bridge connection, so maybe there's some changes that you want to have there, you can absolutely define what those are here. So what you might want to do from an architecture is that because I'm only using local here, my local UNS, I don't need to put in like the the enterprise, I don't need to put in the site. I know it's all the site, but when I publish that up into my enterprise, I want to make sure that I get that all included so it comes into a nice, happy, unified namespace for the enterprise. So I would say put in G5/Arlen for this particular one, or Springfield in this case. But that's really all you have to do. So that's your configuration right there. And you're now taking your local HiveMQ MQTT broker and publishing it right into their cloud broker.
So what you've added to this XML file, excuse me, XML file for the bridge configuration compared to the local is security mostly, and then a wildcard for the topics, just to say, hey, publish everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's where it all is.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, so now that I'm publishing all that data, I want to come into my HiveMQ dashboard. And this is the exact same dashboard that you're going to have for all of your local brokers. It's going to give you all your connections, your inbound rates, outbound rates, how many subscriptions. So this is all the, how many things am I connected to? Am I talking to? Who's all looking at this data? Those types of things. And then it gives you an idea of, do you have any retained messages and queued and that type of thing. One of the reasons why I like MQTT is that you can set up your data to where if all of a sudden you lose a connection somewhere in the line, you can take advantage of store and forward. And so that when that connection comes back online, all of that data is published. What's unique about MQTT is that when that data comes back, because the broker puts the timestamp on it, all of that timestamp now gets pushed forward so that all your data is automatically lined up. It doesn't come in as one big King Kong timestamp. It comes in, it's individually timestamped. And that to me is critical because now, especially if you're trying to do machine learning, you're not just getting this data dump where all these things happened at the exact same time. You're able to continue to build on those machine learning models out of there. So pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, and to be clear for people looking at this, this dashboard is not the dashboard of the tanks or anything within the operations of the company itself. Rather, this is a dashboard of MQTT and the data broker and the data coming up so that you can understand whether it's operating smoothly or not.
Exactly. So this is the enterprise MQTT broker. That's what we're looking at here that's in the cloud. So you can see all the various connections that we have up here. So here are all of the local HiveMQ brokers. These are across the 4 plants. I also have a couple of other just, so I can test connections. So sometimes I use MQTT Explorer. I like using MQTT.fx only because it can parse the Sparkplug data or the payloads. So I have one of those set up as well, and just make sure that I'm getting all of it and I can see things happening in real time. And of course, you can see Canary here. I'll actually show you, and you can probably see in the tab. I can have it all connected up to a Canary historian in here as well. So, but this is the dashboard. So it does give you a lot of information. Again, you have an MQTT, so you can make a connection and who can access the dashboard. Those are 2 different password protected. 2 different authentication that you use in that. So it's one of the things that I like about the HiveMQ is that you can just connect to it. So there's connection parameters and there's also dashboard parameters. So you can limit that a little bit as well. So pretty neat.
Ooh.
So we're going to come over here to the enterprise broker. So again, now what I'm using is I'm using Ignition. I'm taking advantage of the Ignition engine, and I'm now taking all of this data that's coming from the HiveMQ, the enterprise broker, and I'm now bringing it all into all the plants. Now you'll notice here at the enterprise that there's still a lot of various namespaces that we have, and if you've seen some of our other videos, you'll know where some of this information comes from. So we still have like the PLCs that we were working on, but I have all the tank farms that are now coming in, and you can see all those data, all the data is publishing for all those various tanks. Same thing with the Danville plants, all coming in, all nice and clean. And again, the one that we've been focusing on is now Springfield. You can see all this is now coming in, and you can see that it's all updating, pretty quickly. And now we're able to, just like we did on our last tank demo, I can come in here, I can take a look at Arlen, I can take a look at Danville, I can take a look at the Highland plant, and I can take a look at the Springfield plant. And you can see all of the tank data, and you decide, I want to see tank 7, I want to come in and see tank 9 that's down here. All that information is now available. Or if I just wanted to focus in on a couple of them, again, I do have that option as well. So it's tank one.
So this is the dashboard for from the enterprise perspective, and you're pulling data from the broker into Perspective, Ignition's Perspective web services tool, and being able to view what's going on with each of the tanks across the whole organization.
Yeah, so I'm sitting at the enterprise level, and I want to know what's going across my tank storage, or and this is just a particular use case just to demonstrate how it works. This could be any kind of data you have coming through. So going back to our compressor model, I could be looking at compressor data across the enterprise. I could be looking at any kind of process data.
CNC
I can look at MES data. I mean, it's all the way through that entire, whatever is important to you, you can now take a look at it. So it's pretty neat. But again, what's different here is that instead of using all one broker for all those various tanks publishing to it, I'm utilizing a varying architecture in order to do it and to manage some of that data in that payload. So, and I hinted at it earlier. There was a question around, okay, well, now great, there's other nodes that I want to connect in. Well, here now I'm using the Canary Labs. I'm using their MQTT connector. I'm now connected right into that enterprise, that HiveMQ cloud, and I'm able to get all these various tags. So you can see I have Danville tags, Highland tags, Springfield tags, I got Arlen tags. All of these tags are now publishing on one dashboard that I can take a look at. Again, it's tank data. It could be any of the data that you looked at. It could be the compressor data. It could be the PLC data. It's, whatever you want to do, you're able now to compare and bring in. I just showed you a quick visualization. There's all kinds of business analytics you can do on this. Yeah, and it's able to pull in one connection. I'm now able to get all of my data across the enterprise. I will also point out that Canary Labs does offer a cloud historian as well. So, theoretically, you could take your cloud HiveMQ broker and connect that right into your cloud Canary Labs cloud instance, and now you have all that information available, again, across the enterprise.
Anything else before I start to summarize and ask a couple questions?
Yeah, so the last thing that I think is pretty cool is that, so let's go back to, this is the local edge, Ignition edge, that I'm using to generate all this data. So again, this is not publishing anything. This is live. This is what's being published by that the Ignition instance. This is the information that it's getting. So what's happening is I'm now taking this data here that's the local data. I'm putting it into a local MQTT broker. I'm publishing that to an MQTT broker, and now I'm receiving that information. So I'm subscribing to that data. And if you take a look at how quickly that data is updating, it's almost spot on every time you take a look at it. And again, there's a refresh rate on the screen. Keep in mind, this is going to an enterprise. I did a trace route on it just to see how many connections that it made before it got from my local IP all the way up to the enterprise. And there were some 20 connections that it were making. So this is extremely fast in making that connection all the way up and all the way back. And you can see how closely that data is aligned. And in many cases, it's just spot on. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So, and that's because it's a wicked lightweight protocol.
Yeah. So on the right is the local setup for the local company, Springfield, and you're publishing the data from the tanks up to an MQTT broker in the cloud, or you've got your own broker locally, and the cloud broker is subscribing to that. Cloud broker then has the data, and then you are then pushing that data to, or I should say, Perspective is subscribing to that data, and also Canary Labs dashboard is subscribing to that data, displaying it. And here you're actually showing how quickly that data is making it from the local setup up to the MQTT broker in the cloud after about 20 hops, and it's near instantaneous.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a conversation that was involved in this last week on, is there a tag limit to MQTT? I'm not making any claims on this. I was not able to find that there was a limit. It really comes more to, okay, because it uses report by exception, what's the velocity, how often is information coming in? But I saw a use case where somebody tested, I think it was 100,000 topics that were all coming in. So you had these 10 sites that were all publishing, 1,000 pieces of information, and then there was another 10 in there to come to that 100,000. And really, it just comes down to how much horsepower do you have on your broker, and how much RAM do you have. And in a lot of these, and it was really more looking at various MQTT brokers, but a lot of them weren't even breaking a sweat with a pile of information that was being updated every second.
So it would be, it seems to me fair to say that, again, these 4 principles within a good IoT strategy and architecture are really coming to play here. Those 4 being, again, and of course, as always, help me out. I always miss the 4th one, but
it's open architecture. Yeah,
open
lightweight.
Good.
Report by exception and edge driven.
There you go, edge driven. That was the one I was looking for. So for just a couple of minutes, then, can you talk about how each of those are coming into play in this solution, where we're going from local setup, unified namespace, data broker, to the cloud data broker, and then the data is also subscribed to by perspective, where you can get the tank views and then also a dashboard, and all of it being near instantaneous. Can you talk a little bit about how some of those points, those 4 points, come into play and really make this an impactful?
Yeah, absolutely. So on here we have our local data that's being updated, and this is just some simulation that's generated data. But generally tanks, there's a lot of process data that doesn't change very often. Maybe pressures and your flow rates will, but a lot of times your temperatures and levels, those are fairly slow moving parameters within inside a manufacturing process. But it's only going to update when the parameters you've set are okay. Now it's time to update. It's that report by exception. So it's taking advantage of the report by exception piece there. So MQTT by itself, it's an open architecture. I'm connecting to this. It's using a HiveMQ broker itself, which obviously is MQTT. But I'm connecting it with Ignition. I could use Factory Studio. I could connect to Canary Labs. I could use OSI Pi. Anybody that connects into an MQTT with a Sparkplug-B payload, they can access this data. You just have to point it at where that broker is, and they now have access to that particular data. Another cool thing about Canary is that it'll actually publish data back to it as well. So you can bring some information in, do some things with it, publish it right back out. So it's pretty wicked. You might even want to do that at the plant level before it gets packaged and published. It's the lightweight. So, again, this is really demonstrating that lightweight feature of it. So, here now I have, just from my site, I have 10 tanks across 4 plants. So there's 40 pieces of data that are getting updated once a second. And it's just coming right along like, not a problem at all. And then, of course,
really made me think about these 4 principles. It was the lightweight part. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, again, edge driven, it's, to me that's hand in hand with that report by exception, but, I don't have to go out and ask it a question. It's not this poll response. It's, I'll tell you when there's something that you need to know right away. And then, of course, I like I further add on to that a little bit, just saying, not only that, but decisions are made locally. So it's that, it's edge driven. I'll tell you if there's something that needs to happen, but that's driven. Those decisions are able to be made right there at a local level.
Yeah, makes sense. Good. Wow, this is fantastic. This is awesome. I will again draw up a quick little document or a diagram to give a more of a visual here too, to help get these ideas to make sense. This is really, really valuable.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I mean, this to me, it just was like, wow, this is some pretty amazing stuff. That I'm able to come in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things that just came to mind. One is something that we were talking about just before starting this, the limited data. So you have lots of data locally, but the enterprise doesn't need all of that data. Where might you set it up to actually limit some of the data that would actually go up to the enterprise?
Yeah, sure. So when you do your bridge configuration, that's where you'd want to do it. Now, there's many places to set some rules on it. So, again, it's only how often do I publish? That could be one of the spots that you control the data flow that's in there. The way that you architect this is going to be a fundamental piece of, I can set up my locally unified namespace to where, anything that I don't necessarily want to get shared into the enterprise, that'll go in one area. And then anything that I do want to have go in, that'll come into the area that is here. In terms of like, say, a historian, that's now becomes how often do I want to update my database? You can put some rules around that as well. So the idea is that you want to have enough of a change that there has to be something that's different that makes you want to take a look at it. It's very much around the event. Trying to think of where else you could do it. I mean, you could architect this to where you bring it all into one. You set up one enterprise namespace and then republish it back out as, you configure it there. Trying to think where you can manipulate, that type of data. But, pretty much within this architecture, anything that you have that you're going to now publish out there, you have the capability of making it a lot more dynamic in terms of what goes on in there. But this would be my first spot, only because you can set, okay, what am I filtering out of my, again, this is a local setup. So what in my local broker do I want to have go out? I have it to set a wildcard everything. And then when I get there, how do I want it to publish that? So this destination, you would just put in this same type of, structures I mentioned earlier. Let's just say my local unified namespace just has the area line cell, but when I publish it, I want to include enterprise and site in there as well. And that's where you do it.
Fair. Okay, makes sense. So to what you just said there, I was thinking to myself, here in the configuration, if you're not using the wildcard for the filter to say, hey, send everything, but you want to narrow it down, could you say send data for this particular cell or this area rather than having to define each of the tags that I want to send? You could use the unified namespace to help define that filtering so that it's a little more general and easier to set. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, within the MQTT, when you're doing your topics, anytime you put in a hashtag, I always want to say # because I'm old school. So the hashtag, that is just a wild card for it's going to take everything after here. And then you can put in all of your topics as you go down. You can also use a +. And what that does is it just takes you one step lower. It's nope, you're not going to take everything here. You're going to keep coming down that. And then you can define other topics that are there. So you might have +/+/+, and then have a tank farm data / # or hashtag. And then you're only going to get that limited piece of data. You're not going to get all the other stuff publishing through. And so that way, it's instead of having that complete unified namespace built into the payload, it's only going to have the tank farm and the value itself.
And so could you then, not to take it too far here, but you could then have tank farm fermentation, but you're not sending compressors and pumps and other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can build that in. There's multiple filters you can put in here as well.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, it's not just the one.
Dave, this is great stuff. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So,
good.
And I do have to, give a big shout out to HiveMQ for helping me out with that. Stefano was great on just, guiding me through some of the steps of, okay, here's how you need to configure it. Found that I was way overthinking it. It's so much easier to do than what I was anticipating. So I can't thank him enough for doing that.
That's awesome. Good.
Yep.
David, what do you think might be coming up next?
I'm trying to get my head wrapped around because we start talking about bringing in some various nodes to it. I think one of the next things I want to do is in a couple of weeks, I'll be attending one of the Canary Labs roadshows, and that's where we're going to learn about, I mentioned earlier, how you actually take the Canary Labs data and you can manipulate it and then publish it back out. I think that's going to be one of the next things we take a look at. Also taking a look at taking advantage of some of the other technology that exists on hardware, and rather than bringing it through a common architecture, do I have the ability to take, say, an Opto22, one of their Groove Epics, and then publish that data right into some piece of equipment like a Canary Labs historian. There's APIs that it uses. If you again go back to our compressor demo that we did about generating work orders, it's actually just now publishing that data right into it, not having to go through all the middle steps. Taking advantage of the Node-RED and the APIs. But a lot of this is just driven by what people are asking about and what things I'm working on.
Nice. Great. Look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
All right. Yep. Likewise.
All right.